Welcome to ProjectME, the podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Carter, the founder of ProjectME, multimillionaire entrepreneur, former TV newscaster, money-making expert, female empowerment speaker, and self-proclaimed office supply addict. My mission is to take the mystery out of making big money. Every week on ProjectME, the podcast, I'll share success tips, strategies, and stories from other entrepreneurs, experts, and millionaires, showing you exactly how you can achieve your most exceptional life. Now let's get to it. Exciting announcement for all of my listeners. I've officially opened my exclusive group, the ProjectME Passive Income Posse, to the public. This group is by application only, so we can keep the group high vibe and spend our time, energy, and expertise only helping those of you who truly want massive success and impact. You get live weekly trainings from me, special guest coaches, and direct access to me and my business partner for all of your questions. To learn more and apply, go to projectmewithtiffany.com, click on Work With Me, and select ProjectME Posse. And of course, any questions, feel free to DM me at ProjectME with Tiffany. Welcome to ProjectME with Tiffany Carter, the Posse and podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Carter. So you guys, you've heard me talk about taking your deepest struggles, your trauma, and turning them into a platform to help others. All this crap that happens to us in life really is for us, and we can do something with that stuff. You know, I'm famous for saying hurt people can heal millions. So I brought on someone today who has done just that. So Elizabe Benton was depressed, deeply in debt, and obese. As a nutrition expert and educator who binged on junk food every time she put gas in her car, I'm sure some of you can relate to that, she felt like a fraud and a failure. Despite to start truly living her life, she decided to believe in her potential rather than her past. She lost 150 pounds, paid off $130,000 of debt. And today, Elizabe is the owner of Primal Potential. So through her platform of podcasts, which by the way is over 10 million downloads, coaching and live events, she has fueled her deepest struggles into a burning passion to help people create transformation and live their most fulfilled life. So you are doing exactly what I highly encourage people to do with all their shit. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
So tell us, for, the listeners got a little bit of a snippet of what you've gone through there, but everyone's gone through stuff. Everyone has things happen, whether they were born with a deformity, they have acne, they are a trauma survivor like myself. How did you go from being in that space of being a victim to it to working through it and now helping others get out of that zone and into their, best self?
I wish that I could condense it down to a moment, because wouldn't that just be like great storytelling?
Sure.
And very succinct? I think the biggest piece is that I got tired of myself, tired of not living life, really just going through the motions, and years going by with me on the sidelines, not enjoying anything. And I was sick of it. And that was one piece. But the other piece was I recognized a huge lie that I had been telling myself. And that lie was, I'm just not motivated. And it felt very true. I thought that was my truth for most of my life. But then I started to notice evidence to the contrary in my life. Like at the time I was working a corporate job and I was a hustler. I mean, I was easily the first one into the office, frequently the last person to leave. I got promotion after promotion, and I was the hardest worker in my department, one of the hardest workers in my department for sure. And I was like, okay, so I am motivated here in my job, but I'm not motivated here in my own life. but it's just not true that I'm not motivated. It's just that I'm not motivated here. So why? And that was really the shift, the combination of just missing out on life and not wanting to continue that way, and realizing maybe what I think about myself isn't so true.
So you actually questioned yourself and got really real and self-aware with the kind of, so to speak, lies you were telling yourself.
Yeah. And, self-aware is probably an overstatement for where I was at that point. Like when I think about it then, I was still very committed to the problem, very deeply depressed, very down on myself and not believing that change was possible. But I was starting to see some cracks in the story of the struggle. I was starting to see like, maybe this is just more of what you're convincing yourself versus all that is possible for you.
What do you think was keeping you stuck? Because from the outside, I'm sure, when you're in your corporate job and you're doing so well, people on the outside, right, are thinking, oh my God, she's so confident. Because usually people who are successful, right, it's like you assume they must be confident, right? Capable, confident. They must be even happy because you're successful, right? And that wasn't really the truth, was it?
Not even a little, and I don't think anybody thought that it was, only because I weighed over 350 pounds. I looked unhappy. I'm sure I didn't look as unhappy as I really was, as hopeless as I really was, but I was not this exuberant, vibrant, full of life fat girl. I was tired. I was a complainer. I was negative about everything in my life. I was mean to my husband. I was mean to myself. I was short with my team. Yeah, I wasn't fooling anybody.
Okay, because I'm thinking of people who I've worked with or who I know to this day who are, as by all definitions, like clinically obese. And in my experience, what I've noticed with people who are in that zone is there, how I'm sure you've heard the term where someone's like fat and happy, or you know what I mean? And it's like,
not me.
Where like the big smile, it's like an overcompensation where it's like so happy, larger than life, like a lot of comedians, like overweight comedians, they make everyone laugh, make everyone feel good. And so that's what I was kind of almost projecting and assuming that you were going to save that. So your truth is different than what I see a lot of out there. So with what I'm talking about, with what I see, do you see a lot of that too in people?
Yes, but I used a lot of those things like self-deprecating humor and, being very authoritative and very direct and all of those things. And so what I try to do with my clients is get to what's behind that. And so I can definitely see it. I see a lot of what you're talking about in terms of masking, but there's always, everybody fronts in some way to cover something, whether it is worry, anxiety, insecurity. There is always a mask. And I love to just go right behind it. I'm a Yankee, right? I'm a New England girl. So we have a way of like cut right to the chase. And sometimes it's a little uncomfortable. And I love that.
Yes, I would agree. From what I've seen so far, that is your personality. I went to school in Boston. I lived there for 5 years. So I am very familiar with you New Englanders and the sass, right? The sass and the directness. And, I'm direct. I'm direct as well, but you guys definitely take the cake for being direct. So I guess where I'm trying to go with this is there had to be, for most people, there's either there's a series of moments. There is a shift that happens where you're just sick and tired of being sick and tired. Yes. Do you remember that time?
Very much so. I was fairly newly married. I'm now divorced. I didn't handle that very well. the marriage, that is. I was fairly newly married. I was doing really well in my career. We had a new house. We had a new puppy, and I hated my life. I hated everything about my life, and the thing I hated most was myself. I projected all of my fears and my self-loathing into a goal that felt a little bit easier for me than losing weight, because at the time I was severely obese and working in the health industry, which comes with a whole host of insecurities and all sorts of negative emotions. But I channeled it into getting out of debt. So we had just gotten married, and we didn't have a ton of debt, but between student loans and maybe a car loan, some furniture, I think we had financed our wedding bands. It was over $100,000. Yeah, and I said to my new husband, so we're going to get out of debt, and I'm going to take charge, and we're going on like a really extreme budget, and we're going to get it done. And he was pissed. He was like, no, I work hard for my money. I want to spend it. I don't want to feel like I'm being restricted. And I said, well, we're going to do this now so that we're really actually not restricted, because you are restricted now, whether you feel like it or not, whether you're on a budget or not, because our paychecks are spoken for before we even get them in our bank account. So I grabbed the reins, and we paid off that $130,000 in about a year, a little bit over a year.
Wow.
And in hindsight, he's thrilled that I forced that, even though it was very, very tense, and I certainly could have done it in a better, more diplomatic way, but we got it done. And so here I am, no debt, great job, new husband, new house. He has a great job, and I hate my life. And I'm working in the health industry, and I don't want to travel. I don't want to speak because I hate myself.
Yep.
And I just got to the point where I was like, I can do hard things. So what is it going to take for me to apply this to the area that clearly matters most to me in my life, which was my health and my weight and the primary reason for my unhappiness? And yeah, that getting out of debt and realizing the discipline, the consistency, the not throwing in the towel when things don't go according to plan or something unexpected comes up, that was really the foundation for me.
I feel like so many of my listeners can relate, because you don't have to be obese to relate to this story. You could have an extra 40 pounds on you, 60, an extra 10. You could be in debt yourself. It doesn't have to be 130 grand. It could be 5 grand. It could be 10 grand. But there's something holding you back from taking action, taking that discipline in order to shed yourself of the very thing that will set you free, so to speak. So with working with all the people you work with, along with your own story, like, what is it? I know there's probably not one answer, but what is it that is generally holding someone back from shedding the debt, the weight, the thing, the guy, the girl, whatever it is, the shitty job? What is it that prevents people from releasing the very damn thing that would set them free?
It is one thing, and it's mindset. Because I woke up every day and sold myself this story of the past and of the problem. And I convinced myself that I couldn't do it, that I wouldn't do it, that I hadn't done it. Every single choice we make is preceded by the thoughts we think about it, and we carry the same way of thinking. And we think about change as happening from the outside in. Like, if I just eat differently, if I just adopt this budget, then it's going to change. But that's not how change happens. Change happens from the inside out. And I didn't get that. In fact, I walked away. I was on a scholarship for Latin and Greek in college, heavier and heavier and heavier every single year. And I left that scholarship to study nutrition because I thought, well, if I just know more about nutrition, then I'll get this weight issue handled. Yeah, no, change doesn't happen from the outside in. It happens from the inside out. And unfortunately, it took me over 30 years to figure that out.
Yeah, it took me a long time too. I did all the things, right? I owned like the entire self-help section of Barnes and Noble. I went to
Mm-hmm.
conferences. I listened to podcasts. I did everything thinking like, I don't know, that I would learn how to love myself through osmosis.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like that it doesn't that it's that inner work. So did you end up like going to therapy, or what types of things did you do to help? There's clearly some internal wounds going on there, because you don't protect
Oh,
yourself
yeah.
with layers of fat unless you're trying to protect yourself from something.
Undoubtedly, I know what the wounds are. I know when they started for sure. Those stories, those seeds where they were planted, I know it all. And the only therapy I've done as an adult was marriage counseling. So not, I didn't go the therapy route, though I'm sure it would have helped. And in hindsight, it probably would have accelerated my progress quite a bit. Um, I really started to live in the moment I was in. And I wasn't ready to, do all these positive affirmations and like, you're lean and you're beautiful and you're healthier every day, because that felt so vacant
Yeah.
and so far from the truth and like the biggest bunch of crap I could possibly sell myself. But what I was willing to do was just not repeat these stories of the past, because what I realized was, in my job and with my finances, I had just a very frank, straightforward attitude. Like, yeah, there are going to be unexpected expenses and we'll deal with it. And it's not always going to be fun or easy, and we're doing it anyway. And I was just very pragmatic and unemotional, drama free. And I always say to my clients, drama is draining. And I was draining the life force from me with my perspective on food. There was so much drama every minute of the day, from when I woke up, when I looked in the mirror, when I got in the shower, when I got out of the shower, when I got dressed, when I walked into work, when I passed my reflection in the vending machine, you name it. Drama, doubt, stories up the wazoo. And I realized if I thought this way about my work, I wouldn't be good at my job. And if I thought this way about the process of getting out of debt, I wouldn't get out of debt. So I was committed, before I changed my story, to just not infusing every freaking choice with so much drama.
Can you give us an example of like one of your drama-filled thoughts when you were 350 pounds, and then what you replaced that thought with instead?
Absolutely.
That was more like, that was more like you said, like straightforward and pragmatic.
So, I mean, we could talk for 70 million years about the drama infused thoughts that went through my mind. Like, it's amazing that I got out alive. I mean, truly. But for example, I would get dressed in the morning and think, oh my gosh, I'm so disgusting. I'm never going to lose the weight. Like, maybe I can do well for a day, but I mean, every single time, that even if I do well for 2 days, then I blow it. And I would start projecting these past patterns onto the future. Like, I was casting a barrier in front of myself with my drama. And so when I noticed those thoughts, I would just say, be where your feet are. When the moment you're in, I have one more good choice in me. Life only happens one moment at a time. So why are you fishing in the past and barricading yourself from a brighter future? This moment right here, all you got to do is put your damn pants on.
Yeah.
Just put your pants on.
It's like they say in, 12-step programs, there's like one day at a time, but you were going at it like one moment at a time, like be where your feet are, right?
I couldn't go one day at a time. It was too much.
Yeah.
Because in the morning, I would feel really confident and capable. But after a long day of work, I didn't feel so confident and capable. So I didn't have the trust in myself at that time to commit in the morning to a good day. I could just manage one moment, one choice. And my mantra was, I have one good choice in me. I have one good choice in me. And it's not never, it's just not today. So when a lovely teammate would bring in donuts from Donut World, I'd be like, it's just right now, not now. And if I wake up tomorrow and I'm like, Donut World, I'll deal with that tomorrow. But right now, it's just no, not now. I
Well,
have
because the
one more good
reality
thing.
is that you had an addiction, right? I mean, you were addicted. This was a external substance of food that you were using to self-soothe in some way, right?
I totally understand that perspective. The reason I don't choose to look at it that way is because I have to eat every single day for the rest of my life. So to tell myself that there's like a food addiction doesn't serve me, because it's like I have to have this relationship with food. I just had a pattern of talking myself out of what was going to make me feel great. I had a pattern of choosing what I wanted in a moment in a way that robbed me from what I wanted for my life. So I totally can understand how somebody could make a case that it was an addiction. I just don't choose to see it that way, because I I will eat every day for the rest of my life, and I don't believe that it was ever outside of my control. It
Mm.
was always inside of my
I see what
control.
I see what you're saying. I just have quite a few friends in Overeaters Anonymous, so I'm
Sure,
familiar with
sure.
that perspective. But I
Yes.
love your perspective, and I mean I completely get it. I'm a recovered or recovering workaholic. So I do
Mm-hmm.
have to work, right? So I get what you're saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do have to work. I can make different choices. What I know a lot of people struggle with is maybe they weren't, so to speak, the scale doesn't say 350,
Mm-hmm.
but, they're still unhealthy. You don't have to weigh
Mm-hmm.
that amount to be unhealthy and
Or
unhappy.
just unhappy.
Right.
Yeah.
You can be unhappy, exhausted, and maybe your, metabolism is naturally higher and you actually look skinny, or whatever to the rest of the world, but you're miserable. And I find it interesting when most of us know what we need to do that will likely make us feel better. I used to do this to myself. Like I would eat certain types of dairy and I would get sick from it. But
Mm-hmm.
yet I would keep eating the fucking dairy that made me sick. That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
I see people who know that working out exercise of some sort, several times a week makes them feel great, yet they
Mm-hmm.
don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is with all of your experience personally and with working with so many other people?
Perspective. I right now could talk myself into eating an entire pizza tonight and a pint of ice cream. I can talk myself into it, but it's not the only version of the truth, right? So I am always helping my clients say what else is true. And I was sharing that, this is a practice I still have. So and Primal Potential and the work I do with my clients is not at all about weight. It is all about changing the way you think, right? Because that then has an impact on our work, on our finances, on our relationships, and certainly also the way we take care of our health. But I was sharing that right before Thanksgiving, it was the day before Thanksgiving. I had bought a bunch of food that I was going to take up to my aunt's, stuff people had asked me to bring. And I'm sitting in my house and there's this loaf of chocolate chip banana bread sitting on the counter. And I had this moment of a very clear thought. I just want to eat the damn loaf, and who cares? Tomorrow's Thanksgiving. Come Monday, I'll be back to it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I could convince myself of that. And I said, okay, that is very real. That desire to say, I'm checked out, taking a few days off from what makes me feel great, gonna dive into this banana bread, doesn't really matter. Monday will be a fresh start. And then I said, okay, but that is true. And what else is true? What else is true is that I know from experience that I would never emerge from that sugar coma and say, oh, I'm so glad I did that. That feels amazing. I would never the following morning be like, oh, that was so worth it. I also know what is also true is that I've been that version of me and I hated it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in that moment, I was like, I acknowledge that is very real. But what else is real? And I don't know, have you ever watched the show Billions on Showtime?
My favorite, yes.
Okay. So I think it was in season 1, and Wendy Rhodes is doing a counseling session with one of the investors, and the investor was like feeling conflicted about a deal they were doing. Morally, was it right or was it wrong? And she said, in life, there's always going to be multiple versions of the truth. But when you're here, mind the truth that makes you money.
Ooh.
And in my life, I have taken that wisdom from Wendy Rhodes, and I say, mind the truth that moves you forward. There's always versions of the truth, like, I don't want to get up and go to the gym. True. Very true.
I tell my fiance, because he's like, he tells everyone, Tiffany loves the gym. Tiffany loves working out. He'll say it to me and I laugh. I go, do you realize there is not one fucking day that I wake up and I go, yay, I'm going to the gym. Not one day. I just, for me, I remind myself of how I feel after.
Exactly. And so in that moment, right, it is very true when you wake up, that feeling of like, ugh, I don't want to. This sucks. I want to stay here. I don't want to go. True. But it's not the only truth. And what happens in life, to go back to your question, long-winded answer here of like, why do we choose these things that don't align with the thing we want most? It's because we choose that emotional corner of truth, or that familiar version of the truth, that well-worn nugget of truth that we can slide in there in a moment, without ever exploring the big version of the truth, the big picture. And so when I'm working with clients, I'm like, we need to break out of the box of this 5% truth that you keep submitting to again and again. Let's start, even if you don't choose it, right? Mm-hmm. Even if you lay in bed and you say, true, I don't want to go to the gym. True, I want to stay in bed. True, I'll feel so glad that I did. True, I want to lose weight, whatever it is. It's not even about initially choosing something in that other version of truth, but training your brain to start envisioning the bigger version of the truth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You guys, this applies not just to weight, to exercise. This applies to making, everyone hates the word sales, but whatever, it's all sales. Making sales calls, or doing, promotions, or writing posts, or doing stuff to build your business, or starting that side hustle instead of it being in your brain, actually making it happen. Everything that Elizabeth's talking about applies to all these areas of our lives that we are resisting, procrastinating, avoiding. This all applies, all of it.
Well, you know where I use it maybe even more than with food and movement? In any interpersonal relationship. So that means my clients, that means my boyfriend, that means my grandmother. So you get that email that like pokes at you, and you are initially defensive, like, this idiot, they don't get it. Okay. That is one perspective available. That is one corner of the truth. But what else is true? Maybe from their perspective, they say, okay, I can see. Now I'm starting to understand why they're coming at me this way. Or maybe it's also true that I didn't communicate that initial email as well, or as kindly, or as clearly as I could have. I use this with my boyfriend every single day. He dashes out the door and he hasn't fed the chickens and he hasn't fed the puppy. And here I am trying to wrangle everything. Well, what else is true? I didn't ask him to. And had I asked, he probably would have said yes. But here I am, like, thinking he's going to divine what helps me in the morning. Come on.
Right. Or truly, he had something heavy on his mind. That's or he didn't sleep well and forgot. Right. Like truly forgot, not like the male forget.
Not selective.
That was for you, honey. That was for Mike. Thank you.
But yeah, you're so right. Like, I use this more in my business. I use this more with money than I do my own personal, like, wellness choices.
I mean, listen, most of the shit I do all day, I could lean in, like you said, and go down that well-worn path. I still have it, and I'm someone who's a inner driven, highly motivated human, right? But I can still go down the path. We're humans. We want the path of least resistance. We want to sit on the couch. We want to just zone out and watch Netflix. Like that's not strange. We're humans. We're almost like lazy by nature. But I tell myself a different story. I remind myself of how I'm going to feel after. That's what works for me. Like, this is how will I feel after if I take this action? How will I feel after if I take action B? Right. And then it reminds me, like, clicks my brain and, ooh, you know, like, yeah, if I ate that chocolate chip banana bread, it might taste divine going down. But like 3 hours later, when I have a sugar crash, I'll be pissed at myself. I'll be in shame. I'll have, like you said, drama. So how did you go from, you know, you were obvious, which is amazing, you guys. I mean, this is like an unhealthy doctor. I mean, you were in nutrition and you were struggling with that yourself and you couldn't hide it. It was obvious, right?
Yeah, there was no hiding it.
Right. There's no hiding it. It's like, that's very interesting in of itself. It was like, I'm living a lie, basically open in the world. So that's major drama. How did you go from being in corporate America and doing that to what you do now, which is you've taken your journey, your struggles, and you've turned it into a brand and a business where you're helping other people?
I, as you know, dramatic, sappy movie as this sounds, it is very much my truth, and I am not a dramatic, sappy individual. I remember being 7 or 8 years old, and my school uniform didn't fit a couple days before the first day of school. Like, couldn't button my kilt. Couldn't even get it around me. You know how when you try and wrap a towel around you that's too small?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, well, that was like my school uniform situation. So I was hysterically crying, and my mom and my aunt were both there because it's still summertime. And I remember crying to them and saying, one day I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to help other people so that they don't have to feel this. So that was such a deep desire in my heart. But fast forward to, you know, when I was in this position, well, here's the kind of weird part about it. Part of my job was to educate the field that we sold to very publicly, sometimes in the American Airlines arena or large arenas in front of 20,000 people up on stage under the bright lights talking about health and nutrition products.
Wow.
And I was really, really large, like American size 24, 26. As I lost weight, because I was traveling and speaking, a lot of our field, our customers, they were saying, oh my gosh, Elizabeth, like, what products are you taking?
Right.
Well, I wasn't. So I didn't want to lie. And for a few months, like, it was kind of easy to just sidestep the conversation and talk about diet and that sort of thing, like nutrition and what I was eating and things like that, changing my mindset. But it definitely got to the point where I felt like it wasn't fair to the company or to me to stay in that role. So fortunately, since we had gotten out of debt and my former husband was still working and doing well at the time, I said, I'm going to leave. And I'm going to start a blog. Well, I had never blogged in my life, and turns out I hated it. And
I hate blogging too.
Oh my God, I hated it. I was like, this sucks, and nobody's reading it. And I thought, because my background was in public presentations and speaking, I thought, well, I want to start a podcast, except I didn't know how, and I had never even listened to a podcast, but I just knew it was a platform where I could talk. So I Googled how to start a podcast, and the rest is really history. I try every single day to be a better listener and to really hear what's not being said when my clients are telling me what they're struggling with. And it's my dream come true.
What's so interesting, you guys, about her show, Primal Potential, is that out of the 600 something episodes she's done, only about 70 of them have guests. So most of them are solo. So Can you share with us why that is? That's really unusual to see in any kind of show, a TV show, podcast, radio show, whatever it is. So tell us what's behind that. It's so interesting to me.
There are a few things behind it. And I'll add that, there is no one right way. So that's also what's so cool about business, right? There's infinite numbers of right ways. It all depends on what's right for you. What I didn't like about what I was seeing on the podcast circuit is that a lot of the same people were getting on a bunch of shows and saying the same thing.
Yes.
And as a listener, it bored me desperately. And I was like, okay, seriously, like, I get it. You're making the rounds, which works for you as the person doing it. But for the listener, you've checked out. So that was one piece of it. The other piece of it was when I started, nobody was listening to my show. So getting guests was going to be a real challenge. And anybody that was going to be quality in their ability to communicate verbally and add value to my listeners didn't want to come on a show that didn't really have a following yet. And then the third piece is the one that really speaks to my heart right now is my show is not about introducing you to amazing people, because there's tons of people doing that and doing it so well. And I'm grateful for that. What my show is about is building a relationship directly with my listener. So I'm talking to Virginia. I'm talking to Sarah. I'm talking to Jennifer. Like, we are talking. It's not Sarah or Virginia or Jennifer listening to me have a conversation with somebody else. Like, I'm here talking to you. Yeah. We are in this together. And for my listener base at this time today, totally open to the fact that the answer might be different tomorrow, that speaks to how I relate to people.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously it works. You have over 10 million downloads. What's so fascinating to me as an entrepreneur for 11 years, I'm a multimillionaire, I'm an excellent business person and strategist. Most people who have lost the weight, how they've monetized that is they have social media accounts where you see a shit ton of before and after pictures, and then they tie a product line to it. Shakes, nutrition plan, weight loss, exercise videos or something like that. In looking at your Instagram, for example, which you want to follow her at Elizabe Benton, Benton. You look at it, there is not, the only damn picture of you is your profile picture. So help us. I know funny. That's by design because you're obviously a very savvy, smart woman. So that's by design. That is so totally opposite of what every single other person is doing who has had a weight loss journey. So you've got to tell us about this.
I'm really glad you asked about that. Most people don't, unless it's in the form of a criticism. And it is by design, and I am excited to explain it. I used to share a lot more of sort of that stereotypical, because it gets likes and it gets clicks, right?
People like, oh my gosh, love the before and after. Love it. Yeah. I love it.
But what I found is it doesn't change people. It's kind of like we love to watch the stories and feel that inspiration, but it doesn't change us. So Primal Potential is not about me. It's about you. It's about Virginia. It's about Sarah. It's about Jennifer, right? Or Bill or whoever else. I used to do that. And while I got much more engagement on social media, so it's a card I could certainly play, people became more interested in the storyline than the message. People were excited to see and follow along, which is totally different from being an active participant in your own life. And so I made a really firm commitment that I am here and will use my personal experience as necessary, but I'm here to help you change your life, not to feel good about it, not to be inspired to do it, but to actually get your hands in the dirt and create damn change today. And from what in just one woman's perspective, from what I see of all of the befores and afters, which I agree, like they're great to see. I love them too. They don't change people.
Well, sometimes they can make people feel more shame.
For sure. Oh my God, because people will be like, well, that's great, but I could never do that. Or, well, I don't have that much weight. It happens on both sides. Like, I can't relate to you because, well, I only have like 20 vanity pounds. Or I'm not even overweight, but I'm a binge eater. Or really, to the bigger point, primal potential isn't about weight. It is about the ways you hold yourself back with your own thinking, which for a lot of people comes in the form of food and alcohol. But we're not talking about food and alcohol. We're talking about setting yourself free from the limitations that come from your past and your fears of the future. And that doesn't have a damn thing to do with how much weight I lost.
Right. It's just interesting strategy in the age of social media and personal brands, right? I mean, your name of your channel is still your name. It's Elizabe Benton, but yet the only exposure we get to you visually is in your profile picture.
Well, yes and no. So I do a lot of video in my stories.
Oh, okay. I see.
And I do, but like not like before and after kind of stuff, just like me talking, etc. And then same thing with my clients. Not only do I share more of that stuff as necessary, but I also do live events. So it's not that I'm trying to extricate myself from primal potential or pull away from my story, but it's just that for me, because there were plenty of other people doing it another way. So if people are moved by befores and afters, there's infinite numbers of them out there.
True.
For me, posting the big scary pictures of me, it's not what helps people create change.
Yeah.
And it's just that simple.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate someone who does something different. That's what I teach. I teach, do something different, show your shit, be different, because being different attracts different types of people and you stand out and you can get your message out there. Doing all the same shit, you know, that's why I don't have on guests making the circuit. Now listen, if like, you know, Oprah or something wanted to be on my show,
you get a pass.
Don't get me fucking wrong. But I mean, it's like, that's why you don't have to be a millionaire to be on my show. You don't have to have, 300,000 followers to be on my show, because that's not the damn point. I feel like, given I talk about, a lot about money and money mindset, it's like, if I always had on people who were multimillionaires, the same story can come up, like you were talking about, like with weight, right? They can go, oh my God, well, I only make 40,000 now. Like this person, I can't even relate to them. Just like you said, like with your weight loss, right? It's like, well, I only have 20 to lose. Like, exactly. I don't have that. Right.
Yeah. Right.
So I like to have people on all different backgrounds, all different stories, all different income categories, because then it helps disrupt that story. So I'm fascinated by how you are approaching it. It's refreshing. It's different. And you are outside of ego, because I'm sure your ego would really love you posting your before and after pictures, and you'd get like, 1,000 likes or something like that, right?
It would blow up, but it wouldn't blow up with the people I'm trying to attract.
So how do you monetize this message, this passion, this mission that you're on, aside from like, I'm assuming you have one-on-one clients?
No, I don't actually. Okay. That's one thing I don't do. Joyfully, I monetize it, truthfully. So primarily, I have a group coaching program that I open up 3 or 4 times a year. And it focuses on really building a foundation of change that begins with changing the way you think. And we absolutely branch out into things like relationships and insecurity and food and all of those pieces. I have a group of clients. After you've been with me for a few of my 12-week groups, you can kind of move on into more of a continuity thing. I do live events. That's how I monetize.
So you are not focused so much on the cash. You're focused on being a catalyst for change. You're truly not leading by ego or cash driven. Because if you were cash driven, those before and afters tied to product deals would be all over everything. And on your podcast, you would have your podcast would be sponsored by any nutrition company on the planet would want to be, a sponsor on your show.
Yeah, I've turned down about probably nearing close to 100 sponsorship deals on the podcast. I have sponsors, don't get me wrong, but they are products that I love and am passionate about and use personally every single day. So money matters to me, like wealth matters to me, financial freedom matters to me. It is a huge priority in my life. And I am exceedingly proud of the financial transformation that I've created since I started my business. But what I believe is that when I put impact first, income takes care of itself. And that has proved me right over and over and over and over again. So I don't need to worry about the money side of it, because when I lead with impact, the income's good.
It does. It does, you guys. And it has to be genuine impact. It can't be like, people using the word like vulnerability. I'm going to be vulnerable with you guys and share today. Like, it has to be, you really mean it. You can't be half an ego, half an impact. It doesn't work like that. So I want to wrap up with this. So that my listeners can walk away, or maybe some people from your audience who are listening to this the first time. Like you say, it's one decision, it's one moment at a time. So let's say, okay, they're done listening to this episode. Now we're 2 minutes later. They're whatever it is, they're passing a McDonald's, or they're driving home from work and we had a long day and they really don't want to exercise. What is something they can say to check in with themselves, to do a check on their story, right? On their truth that might shift their behavior in some way?
The simplest way I think to approach that is just, I have one good choice in me, and it matters today. And tomorrow, if I'm driving home and I'm thinking that fast food sounds good, like I'll take a different approach tomorrow. Today I want to win the day. Today, I want to win the next 5 minutes. I love the quote. I believe it's Debbie Millman. Could be wrong on that, but excellence is the next 5 minutes. How can I make the next 5 minutes excellent? And then I'll reevaluate, right? I did this when I was writing my book. Like, all right, I don't want to write. I'm not motivated. I got nothing to say.
Oh, my girl, you're speaking up my alley right here. I'm at like the outline stage. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, it became such a practice for me, not only with things like food, but with work. Like, I would psych myself out or say, I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to be in a better headspace. Today's not the right day. Today I'm going to focus on something else. And I would say, look, 5 freaking minutes. Can you do 5 minutes without distraction? Yes. And that's how I wrote my whole book. And that's also how I approach my choices. I'm sitting after dinner and I just want something sweet. Okay, 5 minutes. Can I give myself 5 great minutes of excellent self-care and then reevaluate? And sometimes I'll do that 3 or 4 times. Sometimes after one, I'm like, okay, the urge passed. Sometimes we just have to be less reactive to the initial urge. Let it go. Let it pass. Give it 5 minutes and then reevaluate. And oftentimes by then we've come off that peak of like, whatever it is that we want to do or want to avoid. The moment has dissipated a little bit. And it's just a free, easy tool. And it gets stronger like a muscle the more you practice it.
Oh, I love this, you guys. If you loved listening to this episode and hearing these great mindset strategies and tips that are so simple, and you guys know I'm all about simple. You loved hearing from Elizabeth. Do us a favor, take a screenshot right now, share it on social media, tag me at ProjectME with Tiffany, tag Elizabeth at Elizabe Benton. If you're driving and you forget her Instagram tag, just tag me and I'll make sure to tag her. But take a couple seconds, because there's someone else who needs to hear this. This could actually change someone's complete way of thinking and their life. So make sure you put that out there in the world, or share it with a friend who you know struggles. It doesn't have to be weight. It doesn't have to be exercise. Maybe it's relationships. Maybe they're miserable. Whatever it is, something that will move the needle for them. I know for me, some of the biggest changes that have happened in my life was by someone lovingly sending me something, or sending me a book, or sending me an email, or something like that. So do that for someone today. Elizabe, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and sharing your practical tips that are they're really so simple, but it's, simple stuff doesn't mean it's easy. You actually have to focus and be disciplined to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me and for sharing your platform with me today. I am excited for somebody to take our time together and use it to create a change in their life today.
So what's the best way if someone has some questions or wants to connect with you? What's the best way for them to do that?
DM on Instagram is quick and easy. Again, you've said it a couple times. Instagram is at Elizabe Benton, or email me, elizabeth@primalpotential.com.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, girl.
Thank you for having me.
And you guys, I will talk to you later or see you in the DMs if you have any questions. Have a beautiful day. If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a 5-star review on iTunes. Not only will this make me super happy, but it will allow more listeners to find our special show. Simply help me help others.